Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the one and only THL Set review. I am one of your hosts, Lotus Knight, and I am joined by an all-star team here. I will introduce them as I prepare the screen to show everyone in the last second. First of all, we have board member Baze Dink. Baze, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. It's gonna be a fun show. Next to Baze, we have the one and only Chewy. Chewy, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hope you're doing good too.
And the third host with me tonight, we have Super Chicken. Chicken, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited to hop into the set review.
Oh yeah, we're going to do the classic THL set review of the Lich King set. And just so everyone knows, the way we're doing this time is we're going to talk about um, first strong cards, then cards that we think are overrated, then underrated, and then some cards that we think may be interesting, some extra questions, and we're happy to take your insights. If you have a card that we are talking about and you want to tell us what you think, message us. We're happy to learn what you're thinking and prove us wrong. We're wrong here very often. I don't know if Baze has a memory of all the times we've made a mistake here. Any highlights you want to mention?
None. This show has been 100% accurate. I don't know what you're talking about.
Fair. As always, just a reminder: this is not a crafting recommendation on any of the cards. If we say something is good, we are not at all responsible for it being good. We may promise we will craft cards, or we may say we have already gotten some of the cards, but that in no way constitutes a recommendation on you should craft this. Wait for before you know what is good or bad. If you want to craft anything, or don't obey me. It is your choice. That said, we're going to start looking at strong cards. So we'll look at Dardar cards. Chicken, do you want to explain kind of what a Dardar card?
Yeah, this is a card that you think is just going to be really strong, going to have a significant impact in the meta. Not really pertaining to its average rating. Doesn't matter if this card has been rated highly. That's completely fine. You can still talk about a card like that. Yeah, it's basically purely on how strong you think the card is.
Exactly. So let's start with the first card, and I'm actually going to be the first one today. And I'm going to talk about Shadow of the Mind. This card basically lets you copy a spell. And I just think this card is good. It's just going to see play in every single rogue deck because rogue has cheap spells. Every single rogue deck, doesn't matter what you're playing in the history of Hearthstone, has cheap spells. And you want more of those. You want burn, you want cheap mana. Cheap mana may not be the ideal for this, but even a coin can actually be game winning sometimes. So I think here that Shadow of Demise is going to be a very, very strong card that we'll see play in literally every single rogue deck. But I'm going to ask someone here for comments. Let's say, Chewy, anything you want to say about Shadow of Demise? Do you agree? Do you disagree with me? Go ahead.
I mostly disagree. I can definitely see times where it's not optimal to draw it because maybe you need like an actual card. Because if you haven't played a spell and you top deck it, it's just a nothing card, right? But I do think it's going to be really strong. And as you said, it's probably going to be played in most rogue decks. Considering the average power level of a rogue spell in the current state.
Yeah, I think Rogue just has so many good spells. Like, it's just, they have a ton of good cards, and it just fits well with the kid, I think. Does anyone want to add anything about Shadow of Demise?
The drawback of it needing to be in your hand to transform, so it's a dead draw the turn you draw, is pretty significant, but it is Rogue who's getting some better draw tools. So, like, give and take with that. But yeah, it looks like a pretty just solid card to add to any road deck that needs an extra card in it.
And I do think one thing I will add as well, I think this goes very well with the package we'll be talking about soon because they are overstated cards, and replaying overstated cards is very good. But let's move on to our next card and not jump, unless Chicken has anything to say about Shadow of Demise that we haven't covered.
I just think it'll be quite good with the new concoctions. Like obviously concoctions aren't something that you can put in your deck, so just getting an extra free copy of one, um, or one that you want specifically is pretty nice. You can just kind of sit on the Shadow of Demise until like you roll like the uh the best concoction you want for the situation you're in, then can just play two of them, and it's pretty good.
Agreed. So I'll move us to our second card, which is actually our only mage card in this review. Should we go ahead?
Yes, it's the Arcane Worm, which is Mage's new go-to one-drop. A 1-mana 1/2, which gives you an Arcane Bolt to your hand, and Arcane Bolt is also a new card. 1-mana deal 2. If you have 8 or more mana crystals, it deals 3 instead. And with the arcane package that Mage gets in this expansion with Magister's Apprentice and Vexalus, it can deal some hefty damage in the late stages of the game. The question is if it's too late. But overall, getting just a free 1-mana deal 2 is just great in any deck. And that has always been the case in Hearthstone. So, in my opinion, the Arcane Worm is a really, really stable one-drop.
Is anything you want to add about this one?
We will quickly find out my opinion on one drops that just do a good thing. This is a good card. It's going to enable a lot for Mage just by existing, just because each piece is good.
For sure. One thing I wanted to ask you, Chewy, since this is our final mage card and only mage card of the expansion set review, what do you think is going to be the status of mage? Mage got kind of a casino package and then arcane package. Do you think mage is going to be playable, tier 1, tier 2, unplayable? How do you feel about mage?
I mean, it's hard to say before you see how the meta shapes up because the Vexalus package is something that you will be able to do around like turn 9, right? Perhaps turn 7. So if the mage can stay alive for that long, I think like some sort of Mosaki-ish version could possibly be a really strong contender. I'm not very impressed about the Lunacy minor package Mage got. It looks too weird to me. But I think that maybe a Vexalus deck might slip into the tier 3, tier 2 spot. Possibly.
Chicken, anything you think about mage that we should know?
Yeah, I did want to include some of the mage cards in some of my powerful slots. I just didn't have enough spots to talk about it. And I don't think like aside from the legendary, I don't think any of them like are too different from each other to like really talk about individually. But I do think like arcane mage could sort of work as like a burst finisher or something like that. Like there's some not too difficult ways to find spell damage at the moment. Like if you run Aegwin and then it hits any of your like the one that reduces the cost of your arcane spells, or the legendary that makes your arcane spells cost twice. Or like any other card that costs like 3 mana or less, you can get like +2 spell damage on all your arcane bolts, and you can get a lot of arcane bolts,
Yeah.
um, like 10 of them, I think. I just from like running them in your deck and then the arcane bolt specific cards. Um, so yeah, you can definitely do a lot of damage.
For sure. Faze, anything you want to add about Mage as well?
Looks like it's just gonna have fun, solid tempo tools this expansion. So might just be a good deck that just is proactive and does things that Mage hasn't done in a little bit, dealing a lot of direct damage and being able to build up a hand that just kills from hand. So I'm looking forward to that. I think the Arcane Bolt cards are very fun.
Nice. I agree. I think Mage is going to be an interesting one, but I will move on to our third card of the set review. Base, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so it's another 1 mana, 1/2 that adds a card to your hand, and that is Concoctor. Gets you the Concoction, which are fine cards at 3 mana, and just get better when you have more. So again, just gonna be the building block for a Concoction Rogue, which is gonna do good things at discount rates because concoctions are like combined going to be worth 4 or 5 mana, and you're paying 3. So really solid mechanic there.
Chewy, anything you want to add about Concoction? Or Concoctor?
I mean,
Sorry.
Concoctor is like Arcane Worm for Rogue in this set. So it's practically what I said about Arcane Worm for Mage. It's just a good one drop that fits into the Concoction package.
Yeah, it just looks like a good card. I think there's it's just solid all around. Chicken, anything you want to add before we move to our next card?
Yeah, I think this it depends on, I guess, how strong the Arcane Bolt package is, but I think Concoctor is actually better than Arcane Worm, which is pretty crazy to say. But yeah, it is kind of nuts. I mean, it's like also in a class with Shadow Step, which is pretty insane. So yeah, I think this card is easily going to be really, really nuts.
For sure. Now, speaking of one drops, I kind of want to bring the next card. We have the Lingering Zombie. And I'm going to talk about this one. So, the Lingering Zombie to me is just it's a 1/1 that basically survives twice, and that's a lot. It just can do 3 damage 3 turns in a row, and having minions survive is a lot of how Aggro Druid thrives. With a new spell that brings stuff back and all the undead cards, I think this card is just going to be really good in any aggressive style Druid, and we have that right now, and I think that deck is just getting better. Doesn't lose anything, it gets some good cards, and that's about it. But that's kind of how I see it. I think it's a strong card that will impact because it will make Druid one of the strong aggro decks. Chicken, anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I think the quality of minions in Aggro Druid this expansion has been pretty bad. And I think the deck has really been carried by a couple cards, namely Herald of Nature. I mean, Herald of Nature is like the main one. Um, and yeah, Trog is also another decent one. But yeah, you're running a lot of the times. You're running a lot of just not very good cards that you just have to run because you need a low curve. So this really does help it a lot. Um, Another problem that token Druid has is that it has to run nature spells for Herald of Nature to work, and the nature spells it runs aren't great. Um, and it didn't really get a ton in the way of good nature spells. So that might still be an issue for Token Druid. Like it might keep it out of tier one, so to speak. But I do think Lingering Zombie will help this archetype a lot.
Sure. Anyone wants to add anything about Lingering Zombie and Aggro Druid? Because I don't know that we're talking about Aggro Druid much more before we move to our next card.
No.
All right. So we're going to move to our first and only DK card of this first section. Chicken, go ahead.
Yeah, I am talking about Remorseless Winter. This card might look a little familiar. It might look a bit more yellow the last time you looked at it, and then it didn't also draw a card. But like what's going on there? Why does this card now draw you a card? Um yeah, I think this is just like I think I also think as a whole the Frost package seems to be the strongest, at least from my initial look at all the cards. So I think Remorseless Winter is a very very strong card. Like Consecration plus draw card just seems really broken. So yeah, I have a hard time seeing this not be good. It's not like a flashy card or anything. It's pretty simple. It's just very efficient at what it does, I think.
For sure. I mean, a lot of the cards that we're highlighting as strong cards are just super efficient cards. Chewy, anything you want to add about Remorseless Winter?
No, it's just a power boosted consecration.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Chicken, as we're here talking about this card, this is our less DK card, other than the point we'll talk about the general DK strongest card. But what do you think is going to be the general status of Death Knight? Are we getting a new Demon Hunter in the sense that it's super broken in its first expansion, or are we getting something more normal?
I I definitely don't think it'll be as strong as Demon Hunter was on release. I think it would be very difficult to match that. Like it just pretty absurd how poorly Demon Hunter was like misjudged in terms of power level by I guess both the community and the dev team initially. I think Death Knight will be strong. There's a lot of cards that are just objectively very good on paper. So I think I think Death Knight will definitely have a big impact right away. And it like yeah, I think it might be a bit of a problem, to be honest. It does seem really really good. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see.
Base, anything you think about Death Knights? Is the class just going to be super powerful?
I doubt it'll be day one Death Knight powerful because that's a special kind of power. I think it's going to be solid, right? They definitely wanted to make an impact on it, and the Frost Death Knight specifically is looking really powerful. I think like the rest of like the mixed runed Death Knights are probably going to take a little bit longer because it's a really different deck building experience to what we've had before. So I think those are going to take a little bit longer to figure out. But I think Frost off the bat is just going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Chewy, any thoughts on Death Knight you want to add here?
Uh, I'm just very excited. I also think that I think Frost is looking strong. I think board and Holy is looking okay, and I think Blood is looking kind of fun. So I'm just very excited to be able to play with these decks in 2 days.
For sure. going to be really interesting. I hope. I mean, it's more diverse as well than Day One Demon Hunter, where there was really one main path. I think now there are way more open paths for building, for design. So I'm curious where we're going to end with DK.
Yeah, it has way more like leeway, so to speak, when it comes to deck building. So it's gonna be very fun to see how much fantasy people are going to use to come up with some fun Death Knight deck buildings.
For sure. Now, we have a request from Nice Jewish Owl to talk about Control Warrior cards. So, Chewy, do you want to talk about your second card?
Yeah, sure. So my second card is Asvedon, the Grand Shield. And I know that he hasn't been like looked at really, because he's he's interesting in terms of like card design, uh, because you literally get an exact copy of the last spell your opponent played, which means that you can use it after an opponent has played a secret to like get a copy of the secret to get info. You can use it to, for example, versus a druid after they play Miracle Growth. You can just grab your own Miracle Growth to get more cards. Versus like a mage, you can just get a rune. He has so much utility, and if you are playing as a slower variant of warrior, like Control Warrior, I definitely think he's going to be a card that is really, really impactful, especially in control mirror variants.
He does look interesting to me. This is a card that it's already a 3 mana 3/3, which is almost good stats. You're like 1 mana effect off from having a good card, right? Because that would be a 3 mana 3/3 that does a 1 cost thing is typically good. At least that's how I see it. Like if it deals 3 damage or something, that's already a good card. So I feel like there's such a good potential here. But Hayes, I want to ask you: do you agree with my take? Do you agree, Chewy's take, that this is a very underlooked card? What do you think?
Um, it's very situational and interesting. Um, I don't know. I want this card to be good because like that's a pretty impressive effect. But I definitely think that it's going to be incredibly meta dependent and not just something you're slamming into every warrior deck or control warrior deck even just coming up. It is potentially really powerful. It's got a ton of potential, and it's definitely going to see play in spots, but I'm not sure if it's just staple material at this current moment.
Chicken, anything you want to add about this one?
Yeah, this is I like Chewy mentioned, this is a card I didn't really think too much about when I initially saw it. But it does have like pretty insane potential. Um and if you don't like it is a card where like if you don't play around it, you can just actually just get completely blown out. Um if you play a huge spell or something like that. It could be a pretty funny counter to Thief Rogue if that's still in the meta and they play like Trickster into a big spell on 4 and then don't have a small spell to follow it up with. So I think it is a pretty good kind of not, I guess not disruption card, but it does kind of force your opponent not to play as they normally would a lot of the time.
That's true. Now, with that in mind, let's move on to our second warrior card we want to talk about here. Base, go ahead.
That is the Light Phoenix. What did I say right? I can't remember. The Light of the Phoenix. Yeah, so this is the draw card that we're getting for Warrior to replace Battle Rage. Not as sexy as Battle Rage, but also cheaper. So definitely able to be used in a lot of stuff. Like you're going to be at the worst, most cases, playing as an Arcane Intellect, which solid, better than Battle Rage at the worst. You know, so it's definitely something that's going to enable a lot, and that is what the Enrage Warrior that is currently not doing terrible is kind of missing is having that draw. So it's only going to make that better, and even Control Warrior can use this. It's not like Battle Rage in that sense where it is exclusive to having Enrage Warrior. So it's going to be flexible for the class and just be efficient and make your deck better, which is the not sexiest part of Hearthstone, but hey, it's the glue that's keeping your stuff running.
Chewy, anything you want to add about this card?
I think it's great, and I am very much hoping and coping that Fire Warrior will be a deck. Because I have missed playing good Control Warrior. Even though we got a taste of it back in like March or April or whenever it was. I have very, very, very much missed just playing a full-on Control Warrior. So some of these fight cards are looking really good, and I am holding all my fingers for it to be playable.
For sure. It does sound like a really fun archetype, although Raw Control Warrior really, really would like to have From the Depths back. That card was really...
Agreed.
But unless Chicken has any thoughts on Fire Warrior that he wants to share, we should go to our next card. Chicken, any thoughts before you move on to our final strong card, Dardar card of the night?
Yeah, I'm curious to how good Control Warrior actually is right now, because there's just no one playing it at all. And I think it might be slightly better than that. I think, well, like Charge Warriors sort of sees play a little bit in some cases, but yeah, it's really tough to gauge. Like the Grand Shield card, you wouldn't really expect to see in Charge Warrior because the deck is it's oftentimes like so tightly slotted, and it doesn't really progress your like burst game plan that much, but it could sort of be good as a tech card. So hard to say if like the standard Control Warrior is gonna do well. Like its win condition is still like incredibly slow, so I don't know. It's tough to see like Control Warrior being really strong in like in what might still be a Sire Denathrius meta, but yeah, I'm kind of hopeful. Like Control Warrior was fun. Like it was a bit overtuned, and I think it got a bit over nerfed as well.
There. Now, taking a look at the next card, Chicken, what do you want to show us?
Yeah, my other powerful card is a bit more of a flashy one. It's Anachronos. It's I mean, come on, I had to include a paladin card and a dragon. I mean, how am I not going to talk about this card? It on paper it is quite powerful looking. It's sort of like a twisting nether for one less mana on a stick. So yeah, I mean, there I think there is some sort of control control paladin that includes a good amount of dragons. I think like a lot of the cards in control paladin now are fairly weak, and a lot of the dragons that I've seen at least are in my opinion quite powerful. So I think just slotting in a lot of the dragons will do a lot of work. And yeah, what's nice is that this is kind of a board clear for Paladin that works on its own rather than needing to be a multi-card combo. Paladin probably has the worst draw out of any of the classes in the game right now. So this being able to just be a full board clear on its own, and then also give you a bit of board presence when you play it, I think is quite nice. So yeah, I think this card will be quite impactful for Paladin.
Yeah. So, based, what do you think of Anachronos?
Their computer died.
Oh, so we don't have base for a bit. Chewy, what do you think of Anachronos?
I think I had what was the card? Give me a second. I had Soul Stealer before I swapped it as one of my strong cards, and I had that because of the same reason that Super Chicken has Anachronos. Like you get a body and you get like a Twisted Nether at the same time, practically. And I think that like Paladin has lacked board clear except for Equality plus one other card before, and I feel like Anachronos is just what Paladin needs to get back into the driver's seat in the meta again. Especially if the meta goes back to board based again. So yeah, I definitely like Anachronos as a card too.
Yeah. I feel like Anachronos is a good card. I don't think it's dragon limited though. I think any slow paladin or more mid-rangey paladin is going to put it because it's a one-sided board clear a lot of the times. And the bad part is it has the same effect as Maiev and more minions, and everyone thought Maiev was broken. On another side, it has good stats.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different than Maiev because if you're playing this into a board-based deck, they'll try to continue to play minions onto the board, and it'll kind of force them to either risk losing I assume like if their board is full when the minions come back, they just don't get them.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, so like it I think it works a bit better than Maiev because if you sent away a full board of minions from your opponent, it'll kind of force them to make potentially lower tempo plays than they normally would have, because they just won't get their minions back, or they'll just have to treat it basically as their minions are already dead and just continue playing for tempo, and then it just works as a twisting nether anyways.
Sure. So I'll keep us on Paladin as we move to our Aeon cards, which are cards that we consider overrated. Our first Aeon card of the night is Flight of the Bronze. And I'm going to go against Chicken a bit here. I think Dragon Paladin isn't, there's just not enough dragons to make it a package. And this card in particular, it's hard to wait until the Mana Thirst is active for it. And even when it is, the payoff isn't good enough, I think. Just getting a 5/5 taunt on turn 7 or something is already so late in the game that I think it makes this card not great. I don't think it's unplayable, but I don't think it's as high as a lot of people are thinking that it is. And I'll give it to Chicken since we were talking about dragons here. What do you think of this card, Chicken?
Yeah, I think I do kind of agree that it's, at least from the ratings I've seen, it is potentially a bit overrated. Like I think a lot of the time it's just going to be discover a dragon, which is fine because I think the dragon pool is pretty solid right now, especially with the cards coming at this expansion. But I don't think it's like something that's going to break the game or even be the best dragon card for Paladin. I think you'll probably include this in a lot of slower Paladin decks, but I don't think it's going to be the insane card that some people think it is.
Base, anything you want to add about this card?
It's like It's fine. It's definitely just one mana discover thing is just not modern Hearthstone, and so it's not something that's likely to see a lot of play. The Mana Thirst is like the questionable thing, but Mana Thirst 7 is late. I don't think it's going to be very common. Just isn't what Hearthstone's about anymore.
Fair. Chewy, anything you want to add about this one? And I'll take this moment to ask you, Chewy, as well. How do you feel about the state of Paladin? With everything that Paladin got, do you think Paladin is going to be a tier 1 class? Do you think Paladin is going to be bad? How do you feel about it?
I think this card is decent. Especially like it's okay to discover a dragon, and it's fine to get a 5/5 taunt for 1 mana. But in the late stages of the game, if you have Time Warden, it gets really much better. And it's also like a good tutor for Darren Drake, but it might be a bit too slow. Again, hard to say, but as Base said, it's not just more than Hearthstone anymore. And regarding the state of Paladin, I actually think that Paladin got a really good pack. Like there aren't like out of all the cards Pala gets, I think like there is tops one card that is like half bad, and the other cards are just good. Like just straight up baseline good. So I really think that Paladin will be good to play in this expansion, or at least I hope so.
Yeah. I'll ask our Paladin specialist here. Chicken, do you think Paladin is at a good state as well?
At the moment, I think Paladin's fine. It's maybe a little bit too linear in how it plays the game, which is maybe how Paladin is in general anyway, so maybe that's just the nature of the class. Um, but I maybe would like to see um, some slightly different archetypes come out of this expansion for Paladin. Um, I don't know if we'll see it. Like, I think the Blood Crusader card is the biggest question mark for me. Like, I think the obvious one is that it allows you to go Brand, Sired, and Athreus. Oh no, wait, no, it doesn't allow you to do that. Never mind, I'm done.
No, it's class. It
But I
allows you
think
to play Tyrion on
it is only class card. So I guess it lets you. There isn't really like a huge minion that it lets you play that's really good. Like Rag Lightlord is the one I think about the
it's
most.
Rag or Tyrion. It's one of the two.
Yeah, so it could. I think like maybe it's not insane right now, but I think it could enable like some pretty insane combos down the line. If there's some big paladin minions that come out in the future. But I do just really like the cards that have been printed this expansion for Paladin. I think they're all uh, very interesting, and I really like the theme of them, including the kind of self damage buff low cost Paladin cards too.
Is anything you want to add about Paladin before we move on to our next card?
Paladin lol. I want Dragon Paladin to work. I don't think it will. That's all I really have to say about it.
Fair, tough but fair. Chewy, why don't you tell us about our next card?
Yes, sir. So our next card is the Vile Apothecary, which is the rogue 3 mana 2/4 that gives a random concoction at the end of turn. And at first I thought like it's good, right? You get like a random concoction every turn. But then I realized like when Potion Master Putricide is a thing, and stuff like that, maybe you just want to build a concoction deck with more low stated minions, and just make sure that Putricide is your concoction creator. And then Apothecary becomes a bit too slow because like it's understated and you only get one per turn if the opponent doesn't just remove it instantly. After debating with a friend, I went on to his side and said that this card is not as good as we might think it is at first glance.
This is an interesting one because the thing is, you're not going to get this effect twice. It's so unlikely a 2/4 survives, and if it does, is that game winning? Not super convinced. Base, what do you think of this one?
I think it's the weakest of the concoction cards, for sure. Like it in theory has one of the most upside, but like you're gonna get one out of it, and in most cases you're gonna be okay with that. Um, but yeah, it's definitely the one that has like a little bit of stat cost to it, and that's kind of a bummer. But I do think you just kind of play all the concoction cards. This is just the one that you're least excited to play. Um, yeah, I still think concoctions are solid. Just this one's the worst.
Fair. Chicken, any thoughts on Vile Apothecary before we move on to our final rogue card of the night?
I don't know if I would say it's overrated. I think it's definitely weaker than the one drop, but I haven't seen like this get called like an insane card too much. I think on curve it's better than the one drop, but I think like the one drop is better in most other situations. So I don't know. I think the card is solid and would see play in like some sort of concoction tempo style rogue, or just a rogue that wants to run concoctions, which is maybe most of them. So I think like yeah, I think it's fine and and could still slot into um just like a more strictly concoction focused deck. Um but I don't think I would say it's like overrated or anything.
Okay. Fair. Um, Staying on theme though, what do you think is an overrated rogue card?
Yeah, so this one has been rated like very, very highly, at least on the coin concede. So highly that it's the fourth highest rated card in the set, and that is Ghostly Strike. Now, I think Ghostly Strike is a good card, but I don't think it is the fourth best card in the entire set. Um, like a pretty, I think a fine comparison to like you have Shiv, which is the very obvious comparison, and it's definitely better than Shiv, but Shiv is like unplayably bad. Like it was like not even played much. Like Shiv has never ever been good at 2 mana for 1 damage draw a card. So like the other comparable is the 1 mana dredge draw. I forget what it's called. Gone fishing? Oh, gone fishing. That's what it's called. So I don't think like it's not strictly better than gone fishing, right? Because you get to discover what you draw. And the 1 damage is quite nice as well. But and I think it's good. But like you don't see gone fishing in like it like completely breaking the game or anything. Um, so I think Ghostly Strike is a very solid card, but I don't think it's one of the best cards in the set.
Fair. That's fair. Before I open this one to everyone, I want to ask you, Chicken. Do you think the general state of Rogue is one of the best classes? It seems like we're all converging to Rogue is going to be very good. Do you agree with that?
Definitely right now, Rogue is one of the better classes. I mean, there's a couple different archetypes that are very relevant right now. You have the Miracle Rogue, and then you have Thief Rogue, both of which have very different matchup spreads. and then kind of have fit their own ways into the meta. Card like Ghostly Strike would certainly more be Miracle Rogue favored, just being a cheap card, a very cheap card that does a little bit of chip damage and then also gives you that little extra draw, which can be quite nice because the card draw in Miracle Rogue is a little weird right now, where you're running sprints, so you're kind of doing like one pop off and then drawing more cards on your off turn where your graveyards aren't active. So this maybe can give you a little bit of gas on your pop off turns, which I think could be nice. So I think, yeah, I do think this will help rogues stay in kind of a top position in the meta. Or I mean, it might not, but I don't see a bit of a, I guess, a little bit of a spoiler for a question you'll ask us later. But I don't really see like a lot of the strong decks in the meta right now being completely pushed out.
Fair, fair. We will get to that later, but that is a good point. Base, any thoughts on the general state of Rogue?
I'm always excited for Rogue. It's got concoctions, which I'm looking forward to playing. They look like they're going to have a nice variety, similar to how Thief Rogue does, of a variety in play, making it fun and interesting. The devs love Rogue, so Rogue will almost always be solid. And then I guess to Chicken's point, he's absolutely right. Ghostly Strike's pretty overrated because there's going to be more than 4 cards get nerfed, and Ghostly Strike is very unlikely to be one of those. So why it's in the top 4, that's crazy. But yeah, Rogue's always going to be solid because it just does efficient template things. And I'm excited to play it.
Fair. Huey, any thoughts on Rogue you want to add as well?
Not really. Rogue is looking solid, and yeah, Rogue is always like top, has always like at least one deck that is top tier. So we're probably gonna see that this time as well.
Now, Base, let's move on to your card that you think is overrated that you want to talk about.
I want you to picture if we got another. Why can't I think of his name? 1010. Somebody help me.
Which one?
1010 lifesteal.
Oh,
No, deal with damage. Yeah, Sire. What if we got a Sire that was like even slower, and you had to do like Pyros? That's Astalor Bloodsworn. Which, yeah, sure, it does the Sire thing of dealing a bunch of damage. But why would we jump through so many hoops when we just play Sire? I guess it's like extra Sire, but I don't know. I don't want to play 3 cards. It seems very slow for what Hearthstone is these days. You're just going to win the game with Sire anyway, so why spend all that time playing these okay 2 and 5 drops beforehand and then before you play Sire, instead of just letting Sire sit in your hand and things die on the board. So I don't see it. Community sees it as fine, like playable. I just think that this is an insane arena card and not going to see constructed play. It's the same standard here as Sire. Bummer, Astalor.
Wait, I just saw that this was the 7th highest rated card. What the heck?
They
Wait,
like this
no,
card.
you can't do that. That is, it actually is so slow. Yeah, what the heck? Okay, and it's just most of the time a lot worse than Sire Denathrius. That is very odd.
Yeah, it's not a terrible card, but dang, they like it a lot.
I think Astalor is gonna be good, but not immediately.
Oh yeah, 4-set meta, this and Sire. Whew. Just play minions on curve. Okay, I like that, but I don't know about 6-set when we have Sire who just does it better. Turns it from a losing game to a winning game with the lifesteal part as well.
Yeah, I feel like this card. I mean, it's definitely not the 7th best card in the expansion, no. But Something to point out for me at least is just this feels like it would have been a great card if they printed it 2 years ago or something. Like this feels even like a Baron style card that would have been really good at that time. But it's so slow. It's just it doesn't do anything relevant anytime early, and still you need to spend 15 mana to get the effect you're looking for. That's just it reminds me of Rin, the First Disciple. That yeah, it had amazing payoff, but it was 40 mana. Of course, it's not that
Yeah.
level, but still, you're going to spend a lot of time if you want to make this work in your deck.
Flavor of the card's cool. And I guess to its credit, on 7 mana, you get 7/7 worth of stats. You deal 2 damage and you get 5 armor. Oh boy, what a good 7 mana turn there.
Yeah, I think it's just too fair. But I'll ask Chicken here. Do you think this card is good?
Um, yeah, I think it's all right. Like, I don't think it's amazing or anything, but it could be good. Maybe good in arena, perhaps. But we'll we'll have to see. I'm not too big on it though.
Pyros was one of the best cards Arena's ever seen in its time, so I do imagine this will be insane in Arena.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, I want to bring a different card here that I think is so overrated right now, and that is Soul Master Scythe or whatever it is called, Soul Eater Scythe. Um, you know, I liked Soul Eater the show, TV show. That was a good anime. Um, don't think this makes the deck work. This card is just I don't feel like the Spell Demon Hunter package works this well. I think this card is negative tempo. It's just trying to enable something that really doesn't, in my opinion. And I don't see why you would play Spell DH right now when Felic DH is doing so well already. It's getting one of the best cards in the expansion with a 1 mana spell. So I think this is just weak. I can't see a good reason to play it. And because he's talking about a card that's very similar to mine, I'm going to open to Chicken to tell about his as well.
Yeah, this card is really perplexing to me as to why it's rated so highly. You're just like the mana on the weapon is really inefficient, and then you have to pay 1 mana to actually discover the card back, right?
Yep.
Like once you draw one of the souls, you still have to pay a mana to actually discover it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of inefficient on both ends, and then even like thinking about this in an existing archetype where you want to run like Jace and Zymox and maybe Sathena or something, like you're just never discounting those cards with your relic of dimensions, which is just really awful. So like you could never do brand Zymox or brand Jace, which are just basically some of the most like kind of the most powerful combos in the deck. So like neutering your deck for the maybe slightly more consistent of like getting to pick the card you want. But yeah, just at both ends, the card just seems very inefficient and not really powerful at all.
Yeah, and like I would understand if you saw this effect as almost a downside and you made the weapon a bit better, like make it a 5/2 or make it a 4/3 or something. But this, I just think it's not enough. But I want to ask you, Chicken, to reveal your Demon Hunter card as well that you picked to talk about, because I think it makes sense for us to talk here as a pack.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think like these cards might be good in a future expansion or something. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, Veldore Warband. the 4 mana 4/4 or four mana deal 4 damage. If your deck is empty, summon 4/1/1 Illidari with Rush. Where it's another one. It definitely has synergy with Soul Eater Scythe, but what's like I don't really understand what's going on here. Um, the most definitely the most powerful uh, Demon Hunter deck in the game runs a good a good few minions, not like a ton, but like I think there's kind of in the 8 to 10 range. So having no minions in your deck in a powerful Demon Hunter deck at the moment seems very difficult. I don't think there are enough Demon Hunter spells or spells that synergize with not having minions in your deck to make this a viable archetype just yet. Um, which is kind of funny because we're in a 6 set meta, so you'd think if there was a time for this card to be good, it would be right now. But it doesn't even seem like that's gonna be the case.
Yeah, this just looks so bad to me. It just doesn't seem to do enough. But based on this, what do you think is the general state of Demon Hunter next expansion?
I think Relic Demon Hunter is going to continue to be good. Maybe not um a tier 1 force, although the Unleash Fel card does seem to kind of solve a lot of uh the deck's problems of just being kind of weak to aggro. And then sometimes it is good into aggro when you draw the uh the early like 1 mana relic and some of the other early Fel cards, and this will kind of add to the consistency of that. And I think Relic Demon Hunter's biggest problem probably is consistency. Like, there's just a huge difference in power of when you draw your relics early versus when they're kind of at the bottom of your deck. So I think this will help mitigate that a little bit into the aggro decks. Just giving you another way to deal with a lot of the early game aggression, trying to run the deck down. So I think yeah, Fel Demon Hunter will or like Fel Relic Demon Hunter will probably be a bit stronger than it is now.
That's really good because the deck's already very playable. Do you think Outcast CH has a chance?
I took a look at the Outcast cards today, and I don't think there are really enough strong Outcast cards right now. It seemed like we had way more good Outcast cards in the last kind of last year, in like the last year of Hearthstone, in the like Barons, United and Stormwind, Alterac Valley year. There was like well, obviously the main one was Glide, but we also had Skull of Gul'dan, which was quite powerful earlier on in the year. So it does seem like we don't really have that much Outcast support in the moment. At the moment, I think hopefully in the next couple expansions we'll see some more powerful Outcast cards get printed. But yeah, as of right now, there just isn't really that much.
Yeah. Okay. Huey, any thoughts you want to share about Demon Hunter?
I just don't understand really how you would. We talked a bit about this before. I don't want to talk about too much about Demon Hunter because I'm not sure how they want us to play the deck. Like, I don't see how you build a Demon Hunter as of right now. I don't understand how it's meant to be played. I don't understand why these cards got printed. Like, I understand that they are good in a certain scenario, but as of right now, I don't see how they can be like playable at all.
Faze, anything you want to share about Demon Hunter as well?
Another one where it's like such a cool archetype that just doesn't seem good. Like your payoffs are this weird scythe that lets you pay extra mana to play minions in your deck, and then the Feldari Warband, which is about as good as the other format spell where we get 2 rushers for 4/2 or 4/2 rushers if the first one dies. Like, how is it that much different than the other one? And this one has a huge limitation on it. But man, I love minionless decks, and this just doesn't seem it. Demon Hunter's probably sticking with what it's been doing before. I don't really see much that it's getting as far as its new archetypes. It's got some other things where, like, the outcast cards are okay, where they can maybe splash. I just don't think there's going to be a whole outcast archetype. I don't know. Fun cards, just I don't see them being cohesive enough to really work the way that they might want.
Yeah. Speaking of cohesive cards, Chewy, do you want to show us your next card, your final overrated card of the night?
Sure. It's Rothschild, the new Murloc under legendary for Shaman. I don't know. The whole Shaman package to me is very weird, and I feel like Rothschild has so much that so much that it demands of the player before it's playable. Like, you have to have a board before you play him. That's number one. You have to make sure that the minions you have on board actually die, so they die while other minions are on board. So if a board clear is played, like say Anachronos, for example, or maybe Corpse Explosion or something, it just doesn't really do much. And I feel like in theory it's a pretty cool battle cry and it's a cool board buff, but it seems so far-fetched for it to work that I don't think it's as good as it looks at all.
It just feels like giving death rattles to your minions is never powerful. I know, I feel like you need to do so much for death rattle to be good. Faze, do you want to comment on Rothgill? Or Chewy, if you have any further comments?
Oh no, sorry.
Rockgill is another cool card, but it's overcosted. I do not think that this is going to be the thing they wanted to do. Obviously, it's meant to go on some board flood decks, Murlocs and Undead. I don't know. Most of the time your AoE is trying to clear everything off at once. This does make AoEs potentially much more awkward, or just like straight trades, but I don't know. Definitely an interesting payoff card to try and make things a little bit bulkier, but I think there's better ways to do that in the sets, even just like that 3-drop that makes it so all your minions drop a 1/1. Kind of a similar thing, and better statted in its own right. So Rockgill is kind of just outclassed by a neutral.
Chicken, any thoughts on Rockgill that we haven't talked about yet before we move on to our final overrated card of the night?
Yeah, I think it seems a little bit worse on paper than it might actually be. Like, if you have a few Murlocs on board, you basically have to hit this with a board clear, or you're just like never going to deal with it. Like, I think into other aggro decks or other tempo decks, this is actually potentially very powerful because they just won't ever be able to clear your board efficiently. So it might just be that it can actually lock out certain games against other board-based decks that don't really have efficient board clears.
And if anything, this makes it into aggressive Murloc shot. Likely the archetype to get it.
Yeah, and you still have the 3 mana 3/2 that makes your Murlocs cheaper. So you can definitely still flood the board fairly quickly and then throw this down and make it really, really annoying to deal with. So I do think there's quite a bit of potential here. Just hard to say. Like I think if we're in a meta where there are a lot of board clears, this card will suck because it will just do nothing. But if we're in a more um, tempo oriented meta where aggro decks are a bit more popular, then I think this card will actually see a decent bit of play in an aggressive Murloc deck.
Fair. Now, I'll keep us moving so we end on time here relatively. Baze, what is our final overrated card of the night?
All right, I'm coming for the number one rated card by the Coin Concede community. Anubracon got a 4.74 average. Almost perfect 5. I've never seen a card this highly rated.
There was one that I can remember. It was
What's that?
Hero Scabs for 7.
Oh, okay. That's kind of reasonable. It's a fine card. It is Kuhn the Forgotten King. Like, it's a 7/7 that lets you play another 8-drop on its own, right? When you're ahead and you have the armor to spend, as a druid, you have a ton of armor. Are you losing that game anyways? Do you need to then drop your entire hand on the board? That's not something I've ever thought of as a druid of like, oh, I have all this armor, better spend it to get everything on the board and just win right now. You're a druid who's like, at 8 mana and has a bunch of armor. You're winning that game, bud. Like, how does this help you when you're behind? It gets you an extra 7/7. Sure. The number one rated card in the set is good when you're ahead and kind of a waste when you're behind. Like this isn't the thing that Druid needs to get better as a deck. It just wins harder. So I fail to see why it'd be the number one rated card when it's only really good when you're already ahead. You don't need to finish the game right away, in my opinion. Maybe that changes, but I haven't felt that as a druid. If I'm at that point in the game and I have all that armor, I'm set. I'm cruising. Why does this change that?
Now, we'll still debate this card, but I want to ask you, Baze, here, what is the general state of Druid with everything Druid is getting, both the armor and kind of a token aggro package?
The token aggro is it's fine. We got some good quality ones. Maybe the Nubian Fire is also pretty good. But I think that the other druid cards or the other armor cards are pretty solid. Like Crypt Keeper is great. That it does something that's pretty fantastic. We got some the Beetlemancy also is pretty interesting. As well as the Under King is okay. I don't know if that seems a little bit more expensive as a recover card. When at the same mana slot we get a bunch of 2/1s. But the rest of the kit seems pretty good for Druid, and it's just going to keep being a solid part of the meta, both aggressively and ramping.
Yeah. Chewy, anything you want to add about Druid and Anubracon?
No, I just think Anubracon is really good. I don't think he's actually overrated. I think Armor Druid is a real thing. Anubracon is just a really, really strong card in that setup.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how a Nubricon will fit into slow druids, whether it'll be a new archetype with armor druid or if it'll just be a celestial alignment pop off card, which is kind of how I see the card right now. You just alignment, then the next turn you play this, and then you can just play minimum 8 minions. That seems pretty good to me. A lot of the times, I mean, in a 40 card deck, you're not going to find Lady Anaconda, and then your pop off turn gets a bit stifled. So this is a bit of redundancy for that, which the deck often runs into, and then you also just gain some armor alongside that. So I think it's very very good, and also kind of saves you from like whiffing on maybe like a nourish or something to have post alignment if you have to like use your nourish to get to your alignment. This can kind of help you out in that sort of spot where you just play a Nubricon, then play a few other minions that turn, and then you've stabilized on board and gained some armor. So I think
Yeah.
I think it will be quite good in alignment druid. I'm hopeful for an armor druid as well. I think that could be pretty fun and interesting.
With alignment in the meta, Anubrican pretty much becomes an extra Anaconda.
Yeah, that was kind of like my initial impression. We'll see how it turns out, but I do think a Nubricon is very very powerful.
I hate alignment. I totally forgot it existed. That's like the only reason I could see it. Yeah, that is absolutely a great point. In alignment, fantastic. I just don't think you need it in other druids. But God, I hate alignment.
Yeah, I really hope alignment doesn't come back. It's just so bad. With this said, I think that's enough Druid talk. We're going to move now to our Taunt cards, which are our underrated cards. And Chewy is going to open our underrated section.
Yes. I just need to find the card. I haven't learned the names yet,
It's the
which is the
Coroner.
problem. There it
It's
is. Yeah.
2 mana 2/2 with freeze a minion and mana thirst of 6. Silence it.
Yeah, this was very, very lowly rated. And I feel like it's. I mean, it's kind of a basic card, but it's also a basic card that has been used in the past, and I really, really like what it does. Especially for like board decks in particular, like the tempo decks. Having freezes are like available or sometimes really good. Maybe it's like a bit low in stats, but I like what it does, and it's probably not going to be like a huge, insane card, but it's kind of a funny niche tech card. But I think it deserves more than a small rating.
I will note this looks really good into Bless Priest.
Yeah, unless they run the 1 mana spell, whatever it's called.
Oh, the silence and gain 3 health. Focus.
No, the focused will.
Yeah,
Like you can silence the elemental, but you can't silence the taunt. Or sorry, freeze.
Chicken, do you want to say anything about the Coroner?
yeah, I think it has the potential to be certainly better than how the community has perceived it. I think a lot of that happens to neutrals a lot of the time, where people just like take a quick look at them and say like, "Oh, this isn't like objectively really powerful." So I think it probably sucks. But there's always a few cards in there that have the potential to just slot into a few decks in the meta, and this card looks like it could be very very annoying um, in certain situations. So it's definitely not a card I think I would write off completely. I think it definitely has the potential to be relatively strong.
Fair. Any further thoughts about the Coroner before we move on to our second card, also neutral, for the underrated cards? All right, so I'm going to keep on theme that we talked about 1-drops before. And I want to bring my first underrated card, which is a 1-drop. And the reason is it can snowball out of control so easily. I think it's such a dangerous card, and that is Arms Dealer. Just it gives +1 attack to your undead. I think every unholy DH, any token deck that summons undead tokens is going to play this. I think any undead deck is going to play this, aggro decks, and it just works well. I think it just does its job. It's not a flashy card, it's not insane, but if it survives turn 1, it is so dangerous. And in general, you can't just throw this as a minion. It just looks good to me. It looks like a good card. And it's number 120 something. It's definitely not number 120. With that said, Baze, any thoughts on Arms Dealer?
I like it. I think that it gives you a reason to play undead. I honestly wish they'd made it like a 1/3. Just push the boundaries a little bit and push some aggro, because it's been a while since we got like a really good neutral 1-drop, and I'd kind of like to see some more of them occasionally, especially in a 6-set meta, where you know. I just think that this is one of the ones that, because it's not giving more longevity to other minions, they could have taken a risk on the actual card itself and given it a little bit more stats. But I think it'll be solid.
Yeah. Anyone wants to add anything else about Arms Dealer?
Nah, he just gave us Undertaker vibes, but a little worse. I think he's decent enough, at least in aggro decks.
The 2 health makes me pretty sad. Like they
Yeah,
said, if it
he's
were a
gonna die.
1/3, I think this card would be very, very good. But I think the difference between 2 health and 3 health on a 1-drop is like night and day. So I think this card will not be that great. Like, if it were a 1/3, I think this card could easily just break the game and be insane. But
Oh.
I think at 2 health, this card might just see 0 play at all and be terrible.
That's fair. I do think at 3, this would completely break the game. Because, yeah, you play it on 1, you win. But,
I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
it would be a better Slither Spear, right?
Let's take a look at our final neutral card. A lot of people thought the neutrals were underrated. At least we thought. So, Baze, what is our final neutral card?
We are sticking with the undead, and we are going to Plague Spreader. Is this a good card? No. Did it get rated in the bottom 10? Yes. This is something that's kind of interesting for undead decks. I don't think it'll see play anywhere else. But it is something where if like combo is a common thing, you just throw this into your undead decks because you're fine with playing a bunch of undeads. This is just gonna fit that title, and it's gonna give you some early combo disruption. And like fast early combo disruption can't really be completely discounted. This could have potential if we really need it. And you don't mind it coming back to yours because as long as it says undead, it's filling what you likely need to do with your deck. So I think that it's something that you will consider in deck building, especially format depending. And like that as a bottom 10 card doesn't sit with me. I do think it's being underrated as an option that is potentially instantly game winning against certain combo decks.
That's fair. Chewy, do you agree or disagree with this one?
I think I agree, but the problem is it's a death rattle again. If it was a battle cry, then it would be pretty cool, but yeah. It's also problematic that the opponent gets the same minion. So they can do it right back to you. It's probably still fine as a tech card, but it's not as impactful as say Vol'jin or Theotar, because Battle Cry, right? But yeah, I think it's okay. It's nothing to shout about, but it's fine as a maybe one-off tech card.
Chicken, anything you want to add about this one?
I really hope this card doesn't see play. I do think it's better than bottom 10 by a lot. And if you're a deck that doesn't want to have your minions transformed in hand, like you just have to hold the plague spreader for the rest of the game. Otherwise, your whole hand is just gonna get hit by this, unless you have some sort of way of transforming this or silencing this. And yeah, it's also not a legendary, so there can be two of these. So this could this card could be really, really annoying. Um, it like you can play around it because it's a death rattle, but you can only play around it so much. You can't I mean most decks aren't great at unless you want to run Sir Finley or something and shuffle all your minions back into your deck. Um, you can only do so much in terms of playing around this card when it's on the board.
Fair. That's fair. Now, I'm going to take us back to class cards after we talked about so many neutrals. I'm going to tell my final card of the night, my final underrated card, which is a priest card. We have not talked priest yet. The priest set is very. So, I have Animate Dead. It's a 1 mana spell that basically revives a minion that costs 3 or less, or literally does that. I think this is just so good. There's so many great cards you can bring back. And yeah, it's a random one, but this card sounds broken to me. I can think of so many cards that I would want to bring back and just win with them. Then there's so many combos you can pull with an effect like this. So this is a card that to me is just scary. Even if you just bring back a Radiant Elemental, that wins the game a lot of times. So I feel like this is such a dangerous card, and it's at number 40 something, which is not where it should be. I think this is one of the 10 strongest cards in the expansion. But us base, do you agree with me? Do you think this is a good card? This is a bad card?
I'm really excited to see what we do with this because yeah, you can really tailor your deck to make this busted. And 1 mana, get back potentially a minion that has better stats than the 3 is really solid. And you can then also play specific things like make sure you're getting back Radiant Elementals if you have specific things you want to do there. Definitely a really interesting card that I can't imagine it won't see some sort of broken play in its time and standard.
Now, Based, I want to ask you here, since this is our only Priest card of the night, how do you feel Priest is going to be doing this expansion? Because I think Priest got some interesting cards, a lot of building blocks, a lot of weird stuff. Is Priest good?
I mean, Priest is good right now. Did it get more stuff to support what it's doing right now? Not really. I mean, Animate Dead could kind of just get slapped into Naga Priest right now, and you're not upset to play it most of the time. There's some really high value things that you can hit. Some lower value as well, but 1 mana, you can get away with that. What it got this expansion kind of interesting. I think the other card that I'm kind of interested in is the Crystal Smith Cultist. Maybe Shadow Priest comes back, as a final send off to Void Touched Attendant, which Animate Dead can bring back, by the way. I don't know. I'm not really optimistic about what it got, but I am optimistic for what it has still working pretty well.
Fair. Chewy, anything you want to tell us about Priest or Animated Dead?
I also think Animated Dead looks pretty good. You can, for example, maybe take it into Bless Priest. You can tempo Elemental and then use Animated Dead for an extra Elemental, for example. I don't think it is super good because it doesn't have a whole lot of I don't see it being played in a variety of decks because like you have to build your deck a certain way. But other than that, I think it's decent enough, most likely.
And any thoughts on Priest in general? Do you think Priest is a playable class?
I mean, it usually is, and I think that it has gotten enough things to be playable in some sort. I also think that this Sister Svalna combo probably is playable too. You just have to build it correctly. So yeah, I think it's probably gonna have like 1, 2, 3 decks that is good enough to be played.
Fair?
For sure.
Fair? Chicken, any thoughts you want to share on Priest or Animate Dead that we haven't talked to?
Yeah, this is hard to judge for me. Um, it resurrects like a random one, right? It's like the old resurrect of how it just like
Yeah.
pulls a random one in the pool. Yeah, I think with that it's maybe not that great, but maybe if you, like it's set up to pull exactly a radiant elemental, then it could be good if you drop a radiant elemental and play a bunch of spells and then do this. But I think with like the current pool of cards right now, it won't see too much play, but I think it does have a lot of potential to be good.
Fair? Fair? Um, Chicken, why don't you show us your first underrated card of the night?
Yeah, my first underrated card is Keen Eye Spotter, which I think on paper doesn't seem like an amazing card, but we do run Candle Shot, or we do have Candle Shot in the 100 core set at the moment. So I think that alone makes this card at least potentially relevant. It's hard to see like what archetype this would fit into, and I think that's a lot of the reason behind its low rating. But I mean, there are some other cards that benefit from hero attacks as well, and I think Candle Shot is a really good weapon to kind of just start getting hero attacks in because you can play it so early. So I think there could be it won't be like obviously a full archetype of attacking with your hero in a hunter deck, but I think there's potential kind of like the wild seeds where it's just a small package that kind of improves the deck. I think this might be the case for the hero attack cards as well.
Fair? And what do you think Hunter is looking like next expansion? Is Hunter a dominant force? Do we have another Beast Hunter in hand?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely some good damage spells. I think Quest Hunter might make a bit of a resurgence. Or maybe there's also the potential for a face hunter that has some spell damage built into it. I think more likely we'll see it be some sort of I think the arcane package will more likely be some sort of like quest hunter or slower spell damage hunter or something like that. Which I think would be cool to have like um an arcane spell damage hunter. I think that would be pretty fun archetype. Kinda kinda similar to how Spell Hunter was back in the day. Had a lot of fun with that.
Fair? Um, Hayes, anything you want to share about this card or Hunter as a whole? Do you think the class is playable?
Definitely playable. Keen Eye Spotter, maybe not as much. Candle Shot is a great card. This one, building off that, yeah, maybe. But Hunter is always typically one of those other ones that's meta relevant. almost every expansion. So definitely a lot you can do there. I think that it'll be able to use its new cards. I don't know if the attacking with your hero ones are quite the ones, but I'm really excited for Arcane Hunter. I think that looks really fun and interesting and potentially quite powerful.
Nice. Chewy, any thoughts on Hunter, Arcane Hunter, Attack Hunter? Anything you want to say?
I like Arcane Hunter. I'm not sure about Attack Hunter, but I do think that the Keen Eye Spotter is probably a card that will be good if there is a hunter that plays board. Because like Candle Shot is still in, and like you get the immunity, and that's just super good. So yeah, I really see that being played if there is a board hunter with the Keen Eye Spotter and 2-mana new beast.
Okay. Now, Chewy, tell us your final underrated card. You brought an interesting one here, I think.
Oh, Last Stand. Yes. I'm probably wrong in it being underrated. I can admit that. But I like the idea behind Last Stand. And there are some taunt minions that has been printed that are looks really cool. This is like, but this is not a deck that is probably going to be like high tier. But it could be really fun. Like for example, the Silver Fury Stalwart. If you hit that with the Last Stand, you get a 6-mana 8/16 with Taunt, Rush, and can't be targeted, which often is enough to end a game, unless you face like Anachronos. But like things like that kind of made me really excited for Last Stand in particular. And I mean, Warrior sometimes actually has the opportunity to afford playing 4-mana do nothing. For example, the Dredge is a great example. The Depths. And this is practically Depths, but you get a taunt for it for 2 turns afterwards if you build a deck for it. But yeah, probably not super high tier, but might find its niche.
This is an interesting one. I think this is kind of a deck building challenge card, but what would you say is the general status of Warrior based on this and all the cards that we talked about today?
Enrage Warrior probably still good. It just got more buffed with Blazing Power, Sunfire Champion, and Light of the Phoenix. So you just cut the worst cards in Enrage Warrior and put those in. Control Warrior, it's kind of hard to see, but I like the disruptions that the Control Warrior got with the Silver Fury Stalwart, Embers of Strength, Asphodon, and the Spellbreaker. But yeah, I do think Enrage Warrior is gonna keep its high place, and I have high hopes for a Fire Control Warrior too.
Chicken, any thoughts on Warrior and Last Stand?
Yeah, the only card I can really see this being relevant with is maybe Morshan Elite. And that sort of works on curve, but you also have to run Morshan Elite in your deck, which is maybe not that great. It could be like good as a defensive control warrior tool, maybe, but like I don't really see this being good in tempo, like a tempo style of warrior, because you have to sacrifice your entire turn 4 just to draw the card. So I think it seems quite difficult to get decent value out of this. So I can't really see it being too good.
Based, any thoughts on Last Stand and Warrior you want to share?
Very familiar to that what Predatory Instincts druid card where it would draw a beast at 4 mana and double its health, but now we're getting double its stats on a taunt. You know, definitely a card I've wanted to work in the past. I don't really see it happening again. You know, if it was like 3 mana, because all the good warrior weapons are 4, and yeah, Morshawn Warden is like the dream. So like it's kind of awkward and how that lines up in the curve, and I think that's really what's going to stop it right now. If we get a good 3 mana weapon that we'd want to use with it, yeah, maybe. I can really see it working there. Warrior as a whole, though, I think I'm pretty interested to see what it does with its tools it's getting, because it's getting some nice control tools and to boost some of its enrage stuff. So I do think Warrior is in a good spot to do something new and get some good tools with this expansion. So I do think Warrior is in a great spot. But yeah, Last Stand definitely has more potential than it's like bottom 20 in the rating. So that is absolutely underrated. It's something that could definitely see play and win games, which is not where that belongs in the total rankings.
Okay. Now, Chicken, bring us to the final and only Warlock card we're talking tonight.
Yeah, a card that I think is maybe getting a little too much hate based on comparisons to older cards is the Savage Ymir Jar. Um, it's no Doomguard, but it does. There are some Warlock discard cards that are coming out this expansion, and just some general uh discard cards that are already, I think, in the pool. There's like Lakari Fellhound and stuff. So I think, and there's also High Priestess Deklik. So there might be some sort of discard Zoo Warlock that becomes playable. Hard to, like, it might not be possible because Imp Warlock is such it like is such a dominant force and pushes out a lot of other aggressive decks. But it is possible that we see some sort of discard Warlock come into play.
And
And I guess it's sorry, and I guess it's also possible that this could be like a bit of a slower deck as well. Like, I not entirely sure, but I think this card has been like rated quite lowly, and I don't think it's that bad.
fair. Do you think the Warlock, the whole Warlock set, do you think Warlock is looking good this expansion or not really?
Implock still seems pretty good. They didn't I didn't really see too much that would have helped that archetype in general, but it's also just like one of the better decks in the game right now, so maybe it'll just stay good with no new cards. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think Implock or like Curse Implock will continue to be pretty powerful. And hey, like I think the curse aspect of it kind of gives it a bit of legs in any given meta, because even if you get forced off a board, you still have a somewhat inevitable combo that most decks in the game can't get out of range of, where just if the game goes long enough, you will just be able to kill your opponent with curses eventually.
Fair. Um, Dewey, any thoughts you want to add about Warlock and about um, Imjar, or however you say this? I do not know.
I don't have much on Warlock. Actually, I think Warlock is it's in a weird spot in this expansion for sure. The discard package is looking kind of okay, and so is the death rattle, but it feels like you have to build it half awkwardly to have a good deck if you want to play with the new cards. Obviously, like for the first part of the expansion, we're probably gonna see a lot of per simp and stuff because that's probably is gonna be better in the beginning. But yeah, I definitely think that the Imager is a decent 5-drop, especially for a Warlock deck.
Yeah. Faze, any thoughts on Warlock you want to share or the Imjar?
I mean, the whole package is built on the back of Savage Yumishar. I don't know how you say that name, but as we know, discard Warlock has always been super overpowered. So we'll see how it pans out. But this card does have potential, and the package does have potential because things like giving us resummoning and reborn are huge. So it's and being able to just discard this and get it back off the death rattle, also great. Warlock seems like it's going to get another nothing set as they try and make discard work because the cards you can discard and get rewarded from are not great, and I think that's where they really need to have a good large pool of them to make that deck work, and they don't. So I think that's where it's going to fall flat. But this card itself on its own is a really good replacement to Doomguard. It doesn't go face, but it's a 7/7. We all know 7/7s are the best cards in the game.
That's true. Now,
1 mana off of.
Yeah. It's no Flame Wreath faceless, but going back to Shaman though, Bates, why don't you share our final card of the night?
Yes. Okay. This card is rated terribly. Understandably, no one has face. And from the other side, where you summon a copy of each in your hand. So what I'm looking at this is we got some interesting minions that'll get us rewards off of this in the set. It's a 10 mana board clear, and you're typically also going to be playing something like Sire Denathrius in this deck. Sire Denathrius coming off this is heal for 10, as well as Blightblood Berserker, as well as heal for some. So the way I'm looking at this card is it is a 10 mana minor board in a box, depending on what death rattles you have in your hand, and often AoE that's going to clear the board and heal you, which solid. The other parts of this package is Prescience, which is the actual good card of that, where you pay for get Spirit Wolves and draw 2 cards in that set. But this card is super lowly rated. I think Big Shaman's going to be a tier 3 or 4 deck at the best, but this is going to be the card that makes that deck go. And why is it in the bottom 20 again? The archetype pushing cards belong mid set when they're tier 3 or 4, not just like bottom 10, 15. I get really confused why it gets rated so poorly, even if the deck itself is just not going to be tier 1. Doesn't mean it belongs in the bottom of the set. That's for the cards that never see play, like the 60 cards that are not going to see play from the set.
Now, how do you think with Big Shaman and whatever else Shaman got that's very weird, how do you think Shaman is going to be doing this expansion?
I do think that the token shaman has a bit of actual potential, like Scourge Troll into Deathweaver Aura, getting 4 3/2s off of your death rattle, set up on turn 2. That is one of the best 1/2 curves we've seen printed in a set in a while. Inconsistent and other stuff, but Bloodlust is in standard. I think that it has some potential in that regard of being able to do that. You can combine that with totems and have really consistent ways to trigger things like Deathweaver Aura, which is pretty good valued card. But the Big Shaman is definitely one of the most fun things I've seen printed in this set, and it could be good depending on what the meta looks like. I do think that it can actually shut out some aggro decks with the tools it's getting, but it's obviously going to get run over by OTKs, which 6-set metas are famous for. So we will see how that ends up playing out.
Fair. Chicken, anything you want to say about Shaman here?
Yeah, I mean, being such a notable wild player myself, Big Shaman was a bit of a problem in wild before the Lightning Bloom nerf. I will definitely be trying Big Shaman on day one of the expansion, and will report my findings. I don't know how good it'll be, but it definitely looks like a very fun archetype that I'm excited to try.
Chewy, anything you want to say about Shaman or Big Shaman before we move on to our quick questions?
I mean, I think that this card is absolutely bad. I don't like the card. I don't see how it's like it feels so slow, and you have to like for it to have its max possible value. You kind of need it to. You kind of need to keep your high like you have to accumulate your good card, your good minions in your deck, and then not play them until after turn 10. And I don't want to hoard. I don't want to hoard my minion. I want to play my minions I have in my hand. I don't like when a card goes against what the game is built to do. You know?
Yeah. Now, this is gonna be a very weird one. I don't think this card is good because it costs 10, and the Nathrius also costs 10 and does a lot more, and I can think of a few others. But maybe I'm shocked. Now, I'm going to keep us moving because we're around closing time. So we're going to do a few quick rounds. There are not going to be much explanations. You can explain your choice, but there won't be questioning. So our first question is, what is a new tier 1 deck? And Baze, do you want to start?
Arcane Hunter, you can put Arcane Mage as the stuff, but I think the Arcane cards that we're going to set are pretty fun and going to be solid.
Fair. Fair. Chicken, what is a new tier 1 deck?
Okay. You've heard me talk about dragons before. Surely dragons in Paladin will be good this time. Yeah, Dragon Paladin has never really taken off the past couple times it's been brought in, but okay, this time for sure. I mean, there are some pretty good neutral dragons as well. There's the new 3 mana 3/3 that deals 3 damage. Raid Boss Onyxia is still one of the best late game cards in the game. Amalgam of the Deep is just a pretty efficient card as well. So I think there's the potential there. Um, and I think there's also a pretty good existing control paladin shell that you can slot these dragons into that are just probably a decent bit better than a lot of the minions that control paladin is trying to run at the moment. Because there are definitely some pretty bad cards in control paladin, which I think kind of holds the deck back a lot of the time. So I think like a control slash dragon paladin might be quite good going forward.
Chewy, what is a new tier 1 deck?
I am saying Undead Token Druid or like Undead Aggro Druid. Because it's essentially like the Aggro Druid we have now, except better. They are getting like Druid are getting two different packages, right? They're getting the armor and they're getting the aggro with Eldenadox, Nerubian Flyer, Wither, Unending Swarm, and the Lingering Zombie, and a few neutral cards as well, like Darkari Embalmer, for example. I think that the aggro druid will take the ladder by storm if board decks are a thing.
Fair. That's fair. My choice is the Ghoulish Alchemist because I think Poison Rogue or Concoction Rogue, there's some variant of Rogue that's just going to be a tempo deck And that looks really good. You're taking a deck that's already quite good right now and making it more aggressive, stronger. I think we're just going to see a lot of Concoction Rogue. And
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah. Now let's move to our second prompt, which is best art. Chicken, what is the best art of the
My favorite card art from the set is Devourer of Souls. I think it's just a very nice looking card. Nothing nothing too crazy. I think I like the colors in the card. I think like thematically it looks pretty funny too. Just this giant this giant head sucking everyone's souls out of their body. So I think it's kind of some funny art. I think um well once again the artists have done an excellent job on most of the cards. So I actually had a pretty hard time picking one, but this one was probably my favorite.
Chewy, what is your best art?
Haunting Nightmare. I like cards that tells a story, and I think this art does. I also like the coloring of the nightmare. It's very similar to what they did in the World of Warcraft equivalent to. And I like the details they put into the Blood Elf.
Fair. My card for best art is actually Vampiric Blood. I just think it's such a rich art. There's so much happening. There's this figure. It looks scary. I just think it looks great. I don't know. I might be biased, but I think this card looks fantastic. And Base, what is your best art?
My favorite is Shadow Demise. Typically, I love like the cute ones, but there was not a ton of cute ones. Great art as always, but this one really spoke to that edgy teen in the past for me.
Fair. Moving on to our next prompt, best DK card. Chewy, take it away.
I chose Unholy Frenzy. I think it's from the Path of Arthas set. And I was looking at the Glacial Advance too, but I end up on Unholy Frenzy because it's sort of like the Zero Mana Devouring Swarm for Hunter, but you get the things resummoned as well. And undead, like a lot of DK and undead stuff has death rattles, which means that you get to proc death rattles and then resummon the stuff again. I just feel like this just feels like a really powerful card and a powerful removal, because this doesn't, like, if your minions are frozen you can still trade them in. You can go face and then use this. Like, it's a lot of usage, and it's a really powerful card in its usage as well.
Fair. I chose for my best DK card the Bone Breaker, because it's a 1-mana 2/2 weapon, which is already pretty good, with a really great upside if you're going in a burn aggro deck. So I think this is what makes Frost DH even more aggressive with other cards, and I think it's just a really, really strong card. 1-mana 2/2 weapon just sounds already good, and with an upside is fantastic. Based, what is your best Death Knight card?
I spoke the wonders of Frost, but I think like the single best and most interesting to me is Soul Stealer, where full AOE, get a 5/5, do the thing your deck wants, and get some corpses ready to go. I think that it makes doing a full blood rune one pretty interesting.
Yeah. And Chicken, what is the best Demon or Death Knight card?
Yeah, I picked a pretty simple card. It's just Horn of Winter, 0 mana, refresh 2 mana crystals. It's just the back half of Conjure Mana Biscuit. Yeah, I think just getting 2 mana crystals is good. Um, yeah, it's obviously not the same as Innervate because you can't cheat out something for more mana than you have, but I think the Frost the Frost Death Knight side won't be playing like insanely high cost stuff in general. I think a lot of the time you'll just be playing a lot of efficient mid to low cost cards, and that'll be kind of what gets you through the game. So I think giving you an even better boost to your one turn tempo with this card, I think will just make Frost Demon Hunter really, really absurd.
Fair. It is the reason Ice Revenant got nerfed.
That is true.
But let's look at our final problem, which is the worst card of the set. And I'm going to start with a card base that was good. I don't think Blade Spreader is good. I think it's way too slow. And no one will ever put it in a deck if it's this slow. So that's why I think it is actually the worst card of the set. But I'm happy to be proven wrong if it isn't. Or not. This sounds like the worst card to play against. But we'll see what happens to this one. Next, Baze, do you want to say what is your worst card of the set?
Yeah. So Silbarage, give us discard cards that we can actually play. This is bad, and just also half of y'all haters. So underrated cards, anyways.
Fair. Chicken, what is a worst?
Yeah, I think I picked a card that like will pretty obviously not see constructed play, but I don't even know if this would see much arena play. This seems like not even a great arena card. So this card may actually just be the worst card in the set. Like there aren't even conditions where you would ever want this. What is this card doing? This is just a pack filler. At least make it half decent in arena.
You play this instead of mine in Mine Warlock.
Oh, that is true. It is more efficient stats than Naval Mine.
Yeah.
However,
Except it's
doesn't go
close.
face. So it's like it's more like a more efficiently statted humongous owl, which we have already moved past.
Well, that deals half the damage out of it.
Sadly.
Yeah, well, not half, but 3 less.
No, it's half, isn't it? I'll do
Owl
this
is
8,
7
I'm
or
pretty
8.
sure.
Okay, so if it's 8, it deals literally half the damage Owl does. So
Not the nuts.
yeah. And last but not least, Chewy, what is your worst card of the set?
From the other side, I just don't like a card that forces me to not play the game. And from the other side, kind of forces me to not play the game. So I have to, sorry, based, but I have to say from the other side. I don't like being forced to keep my 8 drops in my hand until turn 10. You know, it just feels weird to me.
If you just put too many 8-drops in your deck, you'll just have too many in your hand. It's science.
Big brain line.
With that said, I believe that is it for us tonight. I want to thank everyone who's in this set review with me, Baze, Chewy, and Super Chicken. And I want to thank all our viewers. I hope you enjoyed. If you have future feedback for our set review, please give us any final words that everyone wants to say before we finish the show for tonight.
Yeah, I'm just excited for the expansion. This is always a very fun time of the year. Get to do this 3 times a year. And I think the six set metas are always pretty fun. There's generally some very powerful stuff going on because there are just so many cards, and usually They try to make the last expansion of the year a bit more powerful so that it's pretty meta relevant. So I'm hopeful. I think well, I'm hoping there's some archetypes that people haven't really figured out yet that are really good. I think the undead cards could be a lot more powerful than people are initially letting on. And I think Demon Hunter will be, or sorry, Demon Hunter 2 Death Knight will be very, very good. And we'll have for some pretty fun deck building experiences.
Baze and Chewy, any final thoughts? Anything y'all want to share?
Just thanks for doing this. It's always a ton of fun. Looking forward to playing some Hearthstone.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It was my first time. And I'm really excited for this expansion.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well, and it was great having every single one of you. With that, I want to thank you all for joining us. And we will, I don't think I have any content planned for next week, but once season starts, Heart Center is back. We're going to bring you some deck insights. We'll come in with the whole action. Saku has a few shows next week. They're actually 3 reveal shows happening at different moments next week. You can check the Discord for information on the dates and times for that. I'm super looking forward to meeting some of these new teams. But with that said, I want to wish everyone a good night, a nice set 2 days from now, and we will see you all later. Have a good night, everyone.